This is Kim Newlove, host of the Pharmacist Voice podcast. Thank you for joining me for episode 86. If you're new to the show, welcome. I alternate solo shows and interview shows. The solo shows are about my career change from pharmacist to voice actor, and the interview shows feature a variety of people who use their voices to advocate, educate, or entertain. My website is thepharmacistvoice.com. What I want to talk about today is how the TeachBack Method helps me in the voiceover industry. Maybe I learned the method 20 plus years ago in pharmacy school. Maybe I heard about it from an article I read, or caught on to it at a conference. Probably all three. It's a great method. Regardless of when or where I learned it, I have used it throughout my career as a pharmacist. For those who don't know about the TeachBack Method, let me give you the basics. What is it? What problem does it solve? What does an example look like? Here we go. What is the TeachBack Method? The TeachBack Method, as it relates to pharmacy, is a technique that confirms that a patient understands their medications and health information before leaving the pharmacy. Using their own words, the patient repeats back what they heard the pharmacist say. We, as pharmacists, use plain language, and this is a shame-free activity that reinforces patient education. What problem does the TeachBack Method solve? According to a 2019 article by Peggy Yen, a nurse practitioner at the Oklahoma City VA Medical Center, studies have shown that a majority of patients remain confused about their health care plans after being discharged from the hospital. I'm going to draw a parallel here. In my opinion, some patients walk away from the pharmacy counter confused about their prescriptions. Pharmacists who use the TeachBack Method can improve patient comprehension and information retention. What does the TeachBack Method look like using an example? Imagine you're a pharmacist counseling a patient about her Advair Diskus inhaler, and this is her first time seeing the inhaler. You're in a grocery store pharmacy, and there's a traditional setup with a pharmacy counter. You're on one side, and the patient is on the other. You ask Mrs. Jones if you can talk to her about her Advair Diskus and demonstrate how to use it by using a demo unit you have in your pharmacy. She accepts the offer to counsel, and you start by showing Mrs. Jones her box of Advair Diskus with the prescription label on it. The label says Mrs. Jones needs to use one inhalation twice daily. Telling her to use the inhaler every 12 hours keeps the ball rolling. Next, you show her how to slide the demo inhaler open. Then you talk about holding it correctly, opening the inhaler to reveal the mouthpiece, loading the dose and advancing the dose counter, where to put her mouth, and fully exhaling away from the inhaler before inhaling the dose quickly and deeply. You tell her to hold her breath for about 10 seconds before exhaling, through the nose or mouth, in a natural way, away from the inhaler when the 10 seconds is up. It's important to share this fact before demonstrating it. Take it from me, talking with a lung full of air is hard. You end by telling Mrs. Jones to rinse her mouth after each dose, close the inhaler, and store it horizontally at room temperature. That's a lot of information. For anyone who has never seen or used an Advair Diskus inhaler, the steps can be a little overwhelming at first. But what if you, as a pharmacist, ask Mrs. Jones to tell you how she plans to use the inhaler, starting with how often she plans to use it? You have given her an easy entry point. She says every 12 hours, and she's off and running. When she explains the directions for using the inhaler back to you, she might forget something. So, she'll stop and ask questions, or ask you to write down the steps for her. When patients ask questions, it shows they care about using the inhaler and want a plan. When a patient has a plan, they are often successful. I know that was a long example, but it's a good one. Sometimes, larger amounts of information lead to less recall or incorrect recall. The TeachBack Method helps pharmacists confirm a patient's understanding before they leave the pharmacy. We want our patients to manage their medication independently. The TeachBack Method gives pharmacists a chance to reteach or modify teaching if needed before the patient leaves the pharmacy, so the patient feels confident. Now, I'll tie the TeachBack Method back into my journey from pharmacist to voice actor. Over the last 3 years, I have learned more about performance and recording, editing, and producing audio files than I ever thought I would ever learn. I have had one-on-one coaching, participated in webinars, gone to conferences, and more. There has been a lot to learn, and I am still learning. Now, I consider myself an excellent note-taker during webinars and conferences. Even when I have a coaching session, I try to write down the key concepts and make a plan about how I'm going to use the information. At the end of the session, I will often ask for a couple of minutes to teach back what I learned and go over the plan for moving forward. Here's an example from last week. I'm narrating an audiobook, and I hired an editor to double-check my work. That's very common in the audiobook world, by the way. My editor told me via email about a cool new program called Positron. She offered to show it to me. Although she's very familiar with it, and I had only heard of it, we connected via Zoom, and she did a great job explaining it to me and showing me how it works. At the end of the call, I wanted to make sure it was as simple as it sounded. So I asked if I could make sure I had all the facts. She said yes, so I gave her a 60-second summary of what she had told me. I got it right, but I loved that I felt confident about signing up for my own Positron account and using it after talking it over with her. Does this remind you of the Advair Diskus inhaler example I used earlier? This is the TeachBack method. I don't have to come right out and tell people that I'm using this method. I just use it, and it works great for me. If you're a pharmacist, you can use it for more than patient counseling. I know I did. Here's another related example. During a 50 to 60-minute coaching session with Shawn Pratt, he would teach me techniques for becoming a better narrator and also share business advice. For anyone listening who does not know who Shawn Pratt is, Shawn was my nonfiction audiobook narration coach. I graduated from his program in September 2020. Check out our interview in episode 83 of the Pharmacist Voice podcast. During our sessions, Shawn assigned homework. I had to narrate a chapter of a book using the technique Shawn taught me. Plus, he assigned an exercise for applying his business advice. At the end of each session, Shawn and I would set a time to meet again. Then he would review the narration and business assignments. If he hadn't done this review at the end, I would definitely have asked if I could repeat back the assignments to make sure I was clear on the expectations. Do you ever feel more at peace when you understand expectations? I know I do. Using the TeachBack method as a pharmacist helped my patients understand their medications and health information. On the flip side, as a student in the voiceover industry, I understand techniques and acquire skills faster because of the TeachBack method. In a similar way, if I don't take good notes, I have to rewatch a webinar, rebook an appointment with a coach, and so on. Good notes help me make good plans and retain information. Taking good notes also helps me get the most out of coaching and learning new things. I need those breadcrumbs to remind me. Sometimes I forget things, and I need to be able to refer back to what I learned so I can use it to be successful in the voiceover industry. Let's wrap this up. I love using what I know from being a pharmacist to help me with my voiceover journey. Thank you for joining me for episode 86 of the Pharmacist Voice podcast. Visit thepharmacistvoice.com to subscribe and read the show notes.